Hey there, Manhwa lovers! Today we're recapping a story called Husband Replacement. Please like this video and subscribe. It helps us a lot. With glittering jewelry, her lady was adorned and showered with praise. The maid said she would surely be the most beautiful woman at the ball tonight, while the butler added that the Duke would fall in love with her all over again. As they praised her, Alici Kamedichi, Duchess of the House of Kamedichi, looked into the mirror. She was indeed ravishing. Her lady chuckled softly, saying they had done well and that she was pleased. She reached for the ring box and asked if the Duke had departed. The maid replied that yes, he had already left and had given strict instructions for them to take good care of her since it was her first time going out as the Duchess. Alici froze. The butler quickly asked if she was all right, noticing how pale she had become. She clasped her hands together and said she was fine, though her thoughts raced. There was no way she could be nervous. She had been waiting for this very day. "Let's go," she said with fierce excitement, because if anything, she was far too thrilled to sit still. As she prepared to leave, she thought to herself that it was finally time to face those wretched people. At the ball, the nobles whispered among themselves. They spoke of how news of the cursed Duke's marriage had spread everywhere, and how the bride was said to be the adopted daughter of the Grandier family. "The adopted daughter?" one of them said. "Wasn't she taken in so suddenly?" Another agreed, adding that she would even be attending the ball tonight. They wondered how such a marriage could happen without a single rumor beforehand. Just then, a voice spoke from behind them. She climbed her way up, that's why. They all turned to see a red-haired lady speaking boldly. "Just think about it. Who in their right mind would fall in love with a man said to be cursed?" she asked. Esperad Kamedichi. A fine duke, yet every fiancé he ever had died mysteriously, one after another. On the other hand, there was the Duke of Grandier, a man old enough to have grandchildren who suddenly adopted a daughter, Alici Grandier, a girl no one had ever heard of. She had the title, but she came from nothing. If the curse claimed her life, no one important would be hurt, and the marriage would only raise the standing of the Grandier family. The red-haired lady listed the names of all the women who had died as the Duke's fiancés, each of them passing away barely a month after their engagement. Then she asked if they were not curious about what fate awaited the new Duchess, Alici Kamedichi. "How rude of you!" another voice cut in from behind. Everyone turned. The Duchess of Kamedichi had arrived. She stepped forward, her presence cold and commanding. She said she had no idea she was the center of such a passionate discussion. The red-haired lady chuckled and called out to her, saying she must be mistaken. Everyone, she claimed, was only curious about her. "Of course, we understand it may have sounded unpleasant, but no one here spoke out of malice," she added calmly. Alici let out a slow sigh and asked how it was possible to discuss whether she would live or die without even a trace of malice. In her heart, she thought that Jessica Belunchi was still as shameless as ever. Jessica replied that they were only speaking out of concern, hoping that the curse plaguing the Duke would finally be lifted. Alici froze. As always, Jessica twisted her words, making Alici seem small-minded for speaking up. Jessica Belunchi, heiress to the immensely wealthy Belunchi family and the beloved darling of high society. She was someone Alici had always found frightening. Jessica had tormented her so badly in the past that Alici often cried alone in her empty room where no one could see her. Jessica looked surprised when Alici called her by her full name and asked how she knew it. Alici answered coldly that she had not come to play word games. She told them plainly that discussing someone's death while they were still alive was inappropriate. The fact that none of them showed even a hint of remorse made their true intent painfully clear. Jessica immediately grew angry. How dare an adopted nobody speak to her this way? She said firmly that she never meant it like that. She claimed she was only trying to clear up a misunderstanding and smooth things over, so how could Alici twist it into public humiliation? Alici's butler let out a quiet sigh. Alici looked Jessica straight in the eye and told her that it did not seem that way at all. In her heart, she knew she was done falling for her tricks. Even a 5-year-old knows how to apologize when they make a mistake, Alicia said, adding that the more Jessica spoke, the more pitiful she appeared in every way. She told her bluntly to admit her fault and apologize instead of staking her entire family's honor on it. At those words, Jessica's expression changed at once. The nobles began to murmur among themselves, whispering that the young lady had no choice but to apologize. Jessica clenched her fist as Alicia made it clear that refusing to apologize was the same as declaring war on the Belunci family. At that moment, the Duke made his entrance, and everyone turned toward him. Seeing the tension in the room, he asked how anyone could mock both the living and the dead, then refuse to apologize after insulting the Duke and the Duchess. Everyone was stunned. Esperad apologized to his lady for arriving late. "So this was the kind of conversation taking place in my absence?" he said calmly. Jessica bowed at once, greeting his grace and claiming there had been a misunderstanding, that none of it was meant that way. Esperad placed a hand on her lady's shoulder and said she did not owe him an apology. Instead, he was the one who owed his wife one. Alicia was surprised. Jessica, on the other hand, glared in frustration as all eyes turned to her. She had no choice. With the full wake of her family's name behind her, she apologized to the Duchess of Kamedichi. Alicia saw the pain and shame written clearly on her face and murmured to herself that letting her off so easily was almost laughable. But this was only the beginning. There would be much more to come. His Grace then turned back to his lady and apologized for leaving her alone for so long. She smiled and told him it was not his fault. Still, she said softly, that the earlier commotion had drawn everyone's attention to them. Deep down, she knew that even without it, they would have stood out all the same. Esperad reached for her hand and bowed in a gentlemanly manner, surprising her, as he politely asked for the honor of dancing with her. She smiled and placed her hand in his, thinking that he was being very considerate. As they danced, she could not stop thinking about how he was the only one who called her by that name, a name no one else used. She knew she would never forget the strange, stirring feeling for the rest of her life. The nobles watched in shock as the Duke and Duchess danced. They looked nothing like the rumors described. They moved as if they had been lovers for a long time. While dancing, the Duke told her softly that he would soon step out to seek an audience with His Majesty. If she felt uncomfortable, she should return to the mansion and rest. She told him that Lady Mars was already overworking herself, but His Grace replied that it was her duty to support her and reminded her that she was the lady of his house. Just as she was about to respond, a voice came from behind them saying they had just arrived and had not yet had the chance to greet them. "Duchess of Kamedichi," the voice called. Alicia froze. She turned at once, her heart tightening. The voice sounded familiar. "Madam," a yellow-haired man stepped forward. She glared at him coldly, thinking to herself that of all places, it had to be here. He asked if she was all right, but she sighed and said she felt a bit faint. He lifted her hand and kissed it, telling her to remember his name, Joseph, the eldest son of the Count of Bonaparte. Her eyes darkened. She thought she would never forget his filthy name. She had returned to this world for one reason: to destroy him. His name burned into her soul, impossible to erase. Joseph Bonaparte, the man who brought her nothing but misery. Her former husband, the one who killed her. If she had any sin at all, it was believing in someone she should never have trusted. Back then, she had run as fast as she could through the forest, her mind screaming with questions. Why did he do this to her? She tripped over a stone and fell to the ground, only for him to catch up to her. He mocked her, calling her a fool for thinking she could escape, saying she had led them to the perfect spot. "Joseph!" she cried out. He asked how she dared speak his name with her filthy mouth. She could not believe what she was hearing. She tried to run again, but he stabbed her. At that moment, she realized he had killed her while she was pregnant with his child. As her life faded, she thought about how she had always been ignored because of her origin. Even though she knew he didn't love her, she still trusted him as her husband. Why did he go this far? She swore she would never forgive him. He was a monster, and if she ever got another chance, she would take her revenge. Then she woke up. Confused, she sat up slowly and looked around. Just moments ago, she had been in the forest. Now she was in a room she knew well, the one she used in the Grandier ducal house. She wondered who had brought her here. Just then, a maid's voice came from outside, asking if she was awake. She answered yes and called for Greta to come in. Greta was the household maid. Hearing her lady call her by name, she asked in surprise if she had already introduced herself. Alici frowned and asked what she was talking about. Why was she being addressed as Miss instead of Madam? Had Greta forgotten that she was married? Alici suddenly froze. She placed her hand on her belly, and it was flat. Greta spoke sadly, saying she knew it must be hard for her. After all, she had lost her father and had come to the capital as the adopted daughter of the Duke. At that moment, Alici wondered what Greta was even talking about. More than that, she wondered why she was alive at all. She was supposed to be dead. Just moments ago, she had been stabbed by Joseph in the rain-soaked forest. She had cursed him with her last breath and closed her eyes in death. So how was she here? Greta called out to her in worry when she saw how quiet she had become. Before she knew it, Alici jumped down from the bed and rushed to the mirror. The sight before her made her heart stop. Staring back at her was her old self, her face from before the marriage. She wondered if she was dreaming. She grabbed the knife beside her and cut her finger, only to feel sharp pain. She was not dreaming. She had truly come back. 7 years back, to the time before she married Joseph. The maids soon began gossiping. They whispered about how the young lady had cut herself with a knife and kept insisting she was a married woman. They concluded that she must have lost her mind after her parents were beaten to death by loan sharks. They said she was lucky the Duke had saved her before she suffered the same fate. Some of them muttered that they felt uneasy serving someone like her, a mere country bumpkin. Just then, the head maid appeared and demanded to know what they were doing. The maids bowed at once. She warned them that if she ever saw such behavior again, they would be dismissed on the spot. Greta was the only one who visited her lady daily. She gently told her to be strong, saying she understood the pain of losing a father. Noticing how absent-minded Alici was, Greta begged her to pull herself together. She reminded her of the upcoming ball she was expected to attend and said the Duke was expecting nothing but perfection. Greta added that she must present herself properly and meet expectations, because only then would she be able to achieve what she wanted. That was when the thought struck her. If she stayed weak and powerless, she would marry that monster again and live through the same hell. She touched her belly, thinking of how she would lose her child and her life once more. This was her chance, a gift from heaven. She immediately told Greta to call for the tailor. Her goal was clear now, revenge for herself and for her child, and to do that, she had to debut at the upcoming ball. She spoke with fierce resolve, saying she would become the perfect lady of House Grandier and would not disgrace the Duke. Most of all, she knew she had to avoid the engagement to Joseph at all costs. In her past life, the engagement to the Bonaparte family had begun soon after she became the Duke's ward. To stop that from happening, she needed to earn her adoptive father's trust at the ball. Only then might she gain the chance to appeal to him. On the day of the ball, the Duke stood beside her as she stepped down from the carriage. As he looked at her, he thought about how unsure he had been given her condition when she first arrived in the capital. As they entered the hall, he reminded her to make sure she did not make any mistakes. Almost immediately, a noble approached the Duke, and they exchanged greetings. Before the Duke could even speak to Alici, she bowed politely to the noble, just as a proper lady should. Seeing her flawless manners, the Duke could not help but think that she was not bad at all for someone from the countryside. Reassured, he told her he would go greet other nobles and left her alone, confident she would not cause trouble. As soon as he left, Alici began to hear whispers. People spoke about her being the adopted daughter of the Grandier family. They said all kinds of things to belittle her, proudly claiming she would disgrace the family. She heard every word, yet she did not respond. She only glanced at them one by one. Alici was surprised. Words like these used to terrify her. Now she wondered why she had ever been scared. Just then, her eyes widened when she noticed a man in the crowd. Esperad Kamedichi, the young heir of the Kamedichi Duchy, known for rarely appearing in social gatherings. In her previous life, they had never even exchanged greetings, but one thing was certain: she knew his future. As she approached him, she felt something strange, as if he did not feel unfamiliar at all. Seeing a young lady suddenly approach, Esperad was surprised. He let out a quiet sigh and looked away. Alici felt an odd emptiness, as though she was forgetting something important, yet she could not remember what it was. Deciding she needed fresh air, she headed outside. On the way, she bumped into someone, a pale-looking young lady. Alici quickly apologized and asked if she was all right. The girl calmly said she was fine and then hurried away. Alici noticed that the girl did not look well, but she brushed it off. She thought about how she had spent 7 years in high society and had never seen that man before. Still, if he was a guest from Count Garavon's household, she should remember him. Then it struck her. The Count's son-in-law was supposed to be at this ball. At that moment, she saw Esperad drinking with the Count's eldest son. Her eyes widened in shock. The pale young lady she had just bumped into was Count Garavon's daughter, the one who had died mysteriously 7 years ago. She had been found dead in the lake. Before Alici could react, screams erupted. People shouted that the young lady was at the lake. Count Garavon was stunned. He demanded to know what they were talking about, then broke down in tears. His son tried to calm him, but it was no use. Standing quietly in a corner, Alici thought to herself that she had always known this day would come. Still, now that it had arrived, an uneasy feeling settled in her chest. Suddenly, the Count shouted, blaming everything on Esperad. He grabbed him by the collar and accused him of killing his daughter. Perhaps having someone to blame for his daughter's death would ease his grief, even if only a little. From that day on, Esperad Kamedichi became officially known as the Cursed Duke. All marriage talks surrounding the Kamedichi family came to a complete stop. Esperad himself refused to form ties with any family, as this was already the 3rd time his fiancée had died mysteriously. While the nobles whispered that Esperad was the problem, Alici knew they were wrong. He was not cursed. In fact, he was blessed. One day, he would become the King of Estel. Her eyes widened at the realization. If the Duke was not cursed, then this truth could be used to her advantage. The next morning, Gria helped her lady get dressed. She remarked that Alici seemed like a completely different person, praising her for finishing her etiquette lessons perfectly. Even the instructor had been impressed. Alici sighed and said that desperation had a way of changing people. In her heart, she thought that as a former countess, noble etiquette was nothing new to her. She was simply using her memories from her past life to create a better outcome this time. Greta smiled and said that desperation did not always lead to such a transformation. Alici thought bitterly that hers was the desperation of someone who had died and come back to life, something no one else could compare to. After she was dressed, she was informed that his lordship was waiting for her. Entering the dining room, she bowed and apologized for being late. His Grace said he had heard she completed her etiquette lessons far quicker than expected. She bowed again and credited it to the madam's excellent teaching. As soon as she sat down, he told her he would get straight to the point. In a few days, you will marry the second son of Count Bonaparte, he said. Godfrey Bonaparte. Alici's eyes widened in shock. His Grace told her she should be satisfied, as Godfrey's appearance was proper and society regarded him well. Alici thought to herself how she could never be satisfied. She knew the truth. Godfrey would later impregnate Jessica, and her marriage would be shifted to the eldest son, Joseph, the same man who despised having a wife of low status and would eventually kill her. The marriage talks were moving faster than she expected. She had to find a way out. Alici spoke up, saying she understood why the Bonaparte family was considering marriage with her despite her shortcomings. It was because the struggle between the conservatives and the progressives had grown too intense. His Grace wiped his mouth and said such matters were not for a young lady to concern herself with. Still, deep down, he was impressed that she had drawn such a conclusion from only a few hints. The Grandier ducal family had originally been neutral, but as the conflict between conservatives and progressives intensified, the neutral factions were forced to choose a side. The Bonaparte family, being conservative, was pressuring the Grandier household. Alici knew she was nothing more than a chess piece in their plan, but if she could align herself with a faction stronger than the Bonapartes, everything would change. As he looked at her, His Grace could not help but think that, although she came from the countryside, she was far sharper than he had expected. He told her they were done eating and that she should not overstep. She quickly apologized and said she wished to request his permission. Surprised, the Duke listened as she said she had acted discourteously toward Duke Kamedichi at the recent banquet and wished to offer a formal apology. Hearing this, His Grace thought about how bold she was. Approaching the cursed Duke was the same as announcing herself to the marriage market. If power was the concern, Duke Kamedichi did outrank the Bonapartes. After all, he carried royal blood. Yet after what happened with Count Garavon, no family wanted to arrange a marriage with him. Alici was an adopted daughter brought in to strengthen family ties, so His Grace wondered what her true purpose was. He asked her directly what she intended. He reminded her of the incident at the banquet, but she calmly said she only wished to apologize. She even told him that if misfortune should befall her, he could use Duke Kamedichi to pay the price. He understood her meaning at once. He had nothing to lose, and she was right. He already knew she was clever, but this exceeded his expectations. In the end, His Grace agreed and said he would prepare a carriage for her. At the Kamedichi ducal estate, Esperad received a letter from the Grandier family. It stated that Alici had come to offer a formal apology for her discourtesy toward him at the banquet. Esperad wondered if she was the same lady who had approached him there without saying a word. He knew there had been nothing between them that required an apology, and it troubled him even more that she had attended the Garavon family banquet at all. Just then, the butler announced her arrival. As soon as she entered, Esperad asked her to take a seat. She bowed and thanked him for allowing her visit on such short notice. "I finally greet you. I am Alici of the Grandier family," she introduced herself. Esperad introduced himself in return, as courtesy demanded. He told her he did not recall any discourtesy on her part, and asked what offense she was referring to. Alici replied that the discourtesy she spoke of was not from the banquet, but from today. Confused, he asked what she meant. She bowed her head and asked him to forgive her for lying in order to meet him. Then, with steady resolve, she said her true reason for coming was to propose marriage to him. The room fell completely silent. When Esperad finally spoke, his voice was cold. He asked if she was mocking him. Alici looked at him seriously and said neither this nor her words were a joke. Though it might seem improper, she, Alici of the Grandier family, was formally asking for his hand in marriage. This is really getting interesting. Seeing a woman propose marriage to men is another different kind of feeling. Sitting across from him, sharing the same space, Alici could clearly see his unwavering eyes. They were nothing like Joseph's murky red ones. Being so close to him, she felt it deeply. This man was born to be a king. Esperad smiled faintly and said he had not known the Duke of Grandier was such a creepy man. Alici was confused as he asked whether she thought he could not see the advantage in aligning with the conservative faction. She interrupted him at once, insisting that was not the reason and begging him to hear her out. But Esperad had no intention of listening. He told her to go back and tell her adoptive father that he felt insulted for being sent here, especially after what happened at the banquet. Turning away, he prepared to leave. Alici tried to explain her proposal was genuine, but he refused to listen. When she tried to stop him, he warned her sharply. If she continued with this deception, the Duke of Grandier would be better off searching for a new foster daughter. "The kindness I've shown you ends here," he said. Alici felt shattered. She knew that if she lost him like this, she would end up with Joseph. No matter what it took, she had to make Esperad hers, or she would be dragged back into that hell. She rushed forward and grabbed his arm before he could leave the room. Esperad stopped in shock and demanded to know what she was doing. Alici begged him to listen to her, saying that after that he could reject her completely. He told her to let go, remarking that she seemed to have no fear of death at all. She looked straight at him and said the reason she wanted to marry him was because he was not cursed. Esperad stared at her and asked what on earth she was talking about. Alici knew this was her only chance to explain. If she spoke properly, he would understand. One thing was certain, she would marry him. They both returned to their seats. Alici told him he might not believe it, but he was not cursed. Esperad asked how she could be so certain. "How can you claim certainty over something even I am not sure of?" he asked. She sighed and said none of it truly made sense. There was no curse. Instead, someone was deliberately trying to stop his marriages. She said that he himself must have had his suspicions, but chose to stay silent so no one else would get hurt. Esperad sighed quietly. She had seen through everything. Then he asked why she would risk her life to propose to a man she had never truly met. Alici knew she could not tell him the real reason that he would one day become king. He would never believe her. Instead, she told him the truth she could offer. She said she could not accept the man chosen for her political marriage. Esperad was stunned. He could not believe she was risking her life for such a reason. Alici explained that once she married, she would be bound to that man until death. She would rather die than marry him. She added that he would not lose face since she came from humble origins, even if she now belonged to the Grandier family. Esperad covered his face, shaken, and told her she could die. He said that Violetta had also done everything she could, yet he still failed to protect her. Alici replied firmly that she would do whatever it took to make sure such a tragedy never happened again. "You may try, but effort alone will not be enough," he said. "That is all I need," she answered. She declared that she would die, but not now and not like this. She would escape the unwanted marriage, and he would use her to uncover the one behind all of this. Hearing her words, Esperad could only think that her desperation was too real to be a lie. She was putting everything on the line. Alici added that if she died, she was only a foster daughter. It wouldn't damage the ties between families. Esperad sighed and said he was not concerned about political ties at all. No matter the situation, her safety should come first. Alici was surprised. She had not expected him to worry about her. Why wouldn't he be? "My dear, he's bound to be worried." Alici told him to trust her, because she believed she would not die. He asked why she was so confident. She looked at him proudly and said that if he stood by her side, she believed he would always be watching over her. So what did she have to fear? As soon as her lady left in his carriage, Esperad stood by the window, deep in thought. It was the first time anyone had ever told him he was not cursed. Back at the Grandier ducal estate, His Grace asked her what had truly happened during her visit. Why had Duke Kamedichi sent a marriage proposal immediately after? Alici replied that nothing special had been discussed. She said forming a strong alliance with the Kamedichi family would bring more benefit than aligning with House Bonaparte. He hummed thoughtfully and accepted the invitation, saying he would do as she wished. Then he looked at her closely. "But tell me," he said, "why would you choose the Duke of Kamedichi?" She was about to repeat that it was for the family's sake, but he stopped her and told her to speak honestly. Why would she risk everything for a man branded as cursed? Hearing that, Alici thought to herself that she had never seen it as a risk. She searched for the right words. "It was love at first sight," she said. His Grace was clearly surprised. Love at first sight with the Duke of Kamedichi? He smiled and called out, asking if His Highness was aware of this. Alici was stunned when Esperad appeared from behind, saying they had already shared quite a lot between them. This is so hilarious. So Esperad heard her saying it was love at first sight. After sitting down, Esperad stated that since both families were now in agreement, the marriage should be arranged as quickly and as secretly as possible. He glanced at Alici and added that this was for her protection. As he looked at her, it was hard to believe she was the same bold woman who had proposed to him. Her calm, businesslike manner did not match someone who had confessed love at first sight. Still, one thing was certain. She was a very intriguing woman. Watching the two of them, Duke Grandier could not help feeling confused. He could not understand what exactly they had shared between themselves. Soon, the wedding day arrived. Only a few people were present: the Duke, Alici's adopted father, and Esperad's escort knight, Edgar Billion. Even the priest was shocked to see such a quiet wedding with only 2 witnesses, but he carried on nonetheless. He asked Esperad if he accepted Alici as his partner, and he answered yes. The same question was given to her, and she accepted him as well, thinking to herself that this was her second vow. The priest sealed their union before the divine. Alici wondered if the eyes of the divine were truly watching them. If so, was her painful past also the will of the divine? And what about her burning desire for revenge now? Was that also fate? Esperad suddenly asked if she regretted it. He told her it was not too late to turn back, that she could still refuse the vow. At that moment, she realized something clearly. This man must have been treated badly and rejected too many times. Why else would he say such a thing on their wedding day? "If I didn't marry you," she said firmly, "I think I would regret it. I'm your wife now." They sealed their union with a kiss. As their lips met, she could not help thinking how different he was from Joseph. He treated her with such natural respect. When they returned to the mansion, Esperad told her it was the first time they had spoken alone since that day. He offered his hand and said he would escort her to her room. Alici was surprised and asked if there was a problem, adding that she thought he would be busy with work. "I'm not so busy that I can't spare time on my wedding day," he replied, calling her by her name. She was surprised once more. Esperad told her that now that they were married, he wished to stop using formal titles. If she felt uncomfortable, he would return to them. Alici smiled and said she did not mind at all. In her heart, she felt a quiet sadness. She had always been called Madame, Miss Grandier, or Madame Bonaparte. No one had ever called her by her name. Now, her husband wanted to call her Alici. She held back a happy smile and said, "I think I like it, Esperad." He was taken aback by her smile. She asked if he was comfortable with her calling him by his name as well. He smiled in return and said he was glad to hear it. As his cheeks turned red, Esperad thought to himself that Alici was shining. "I love this guy already. At this point, I wouldn't say this is a contract marriage. They're really so sweet towards each other." Alici was surprised when he led her to the bedroom. For a moment, she simply stood there, staring. She could hardly believe they would be sharing a room. When she had married Joseph, they never did. She had been given a small room no larger than the maid's quarters. Back then, she had forced herself to believe it was normal, but deep down, she had always known it wasn't. Esperad called her attention back to him. "This will be our room from today onward," he said gently. "Since it's our bedroom, I thought we should open it together." This man is really so sweet. They joined hands and opened the doors together. Alici's eyes widened in shock. The bed was enormous, draped in fine fabrics, and the room shimmered softly under the light. Everything from the curtains to the furniture looked elegant and warm. She couldn't stop herself. "Wow!" she breathed. She turned to him immediately, excitement written all over her face. "It's so beautiful." Relief crossed Esperad's expression. He admitted that he had worried it might feel lacking since everything had been arranged so quickly. Alici laughed softly and shook her head. "It's perfect." Afterward, Esperad suggested they tour the estate before nightfall. As they turned to leave, Alici hesitated, then called out to him. "Esperad, could you help me with something?" He asked what it was, and instead of answering, she turned her back to him and lifted her hair, exposing the buttons of her dress. "Could you help me take this off?" His reaction was immediate. His entire face flushed. He stammered, clearly flustered. You mean the wedding dress?" She glanced at him, puzzled. "Yes." As he reached for the buttons, his heart pounded. He had never thought deeply about marriage before, but if this was also part of a husband's duty, then he would gladly do it. He undid the first button. Then he froze. "What's wrong?" she asked. "There's a scar," he said quietly. "It looks like a sword wound." She glanced back calmly. "Oh, that? I probably got it while playing around as a child. You can continue." Though uncertain, he did as she asked. When he reached the final button, the dress slipped down and Esperad panicked, immediately turning away. Alici smiled at his reaction and thanked him sincerely. Wait, did he think she'd be uncovered after the clothes fell? "I'll go change as well," he said quickly, retreating. In his mind, he admitted he was genuinely afraid there would be nothing underneath. "I'll wait for you," she said softly as he left. Once she was alone, Alici's expression darkened. She touched the scar on her back. It can only be Joseph's blade. That must have been when it happened, but it's strange how her 18-year-old body still bears wounds from the life she died. She knew she would have to keep covering it with makeup, as she always did. Soon after, she and His Grace resumed their tour of the mansion. She praised how immaculate everything was and asked who managed such a beautiful estate. Esperad told her she would soon meet Benjamin and Madame Marseille. Despite herself, Alici worried the walk might feel awkward. They were newly married, after all, but Esperad guided her with ease, never rushing her, never making her uncomfortable. Then he stopped. "This way," he said. He led her to a door and explained that only 3 people had access to the room behind it, himself as head of the house, and Benjamin and Madame Marseille, but he's adding her now. He opened the door. "Let me introduce you to the secret room of the Kamedichi Duchy." Inside, Alici gasped. The family tree covered the wall, carefully preserved, tracing generations tied closely to royalty. Her name was there, written among nobles and royalty alike. In this country, Estelle, even if royalty received a title, it wasn't hereditary. Royalty without titles were nothing but empty shells, holding only bloodline, and nobles avoided marrying them. However, the previous Kamedichi Duke had received the king's recognition and passed down his title, so Esperad had both bloodline and rank. With everything, status, bloodline, and a good reputation in society, he was a rising groom candidate in social circles, despite countless rumors. Esperad explained to his lady that his father was the youngest brother of the late King Ludwig II, making him close in age to the late king's 2 sons, King Briam III, and close friends with Count Merk. Their closeness sparked interesting stories within the palace. Alici smiled, curiosity sparkling in her eyes. "The first thing that comes to mind is about my mother. His Majesty the former king, the late king, and Count Merk were all worried about my father's bride," he said, explaining how the 3 could never agree on who my father should marry. So his father remained unmarried even past the usual marriageable age. Then one day his father attended a ball in the kingdom of Descartes and fell in love with Princess Rihanna. Most royalty had no objections, after all she was a princess, making her a suitable match. The marriage seemed certain to proceed until Count Merk strongly opposed. Alici's eyes widened in surprise. Esperad explained that it wasn't just that they were the same age, but that his father and Count Merk got along so well because their preferences matched. Count Merk had fallen for her at first sight, too. Both men proposed to her at the same time, and his mother requested a duel to test their strength. The fight was fierce, and their supposed close friendship turned out to be a lie. It's crazy. His mother ruined the friendship of 2 best friends. Who even duels over a woman? Alici concluded that his father must have won. Esperad smiled, confirming that was true. They held their wedding just a month later. He told her it was an exceptionally fast development, even breaking the record by marrying in just 1 week. Alici could barely find words. Looking at the family tree, he told her that the room had now become a place for the 2 of them. Alici smiled, thinking to herself that he genuinely considered her a member of the ducal family. She thanked him, and he smiled, saying it was only natural. Looking at her face, he wondered what kind of sadness she carried to make such a pitiful expression. Finally, Madame Marseille came over and introduced herself to the new Duchess. Alici was glad and asked for her guidance, admitting she was still inexperienced. Madame Marseille placed a cup of tea on the table, explaining it would help relieve tension for both master and mistress. Alici was surprised when she left and picked up the tea, realizing the woman was creating a space for them. She appreciated the quiet moment to gather her thoughts. Though her marriage to Esperad was technically a contract, he treated her like a real wife, and she was grateful for his kindness. Suddenly, a thought froze her. What if he wanted a deeper relationship as a married couple? Just then, she heard him call her name. She turned to see him emerging from the shower, broad chest uncovered, water dripping down, looking impossibly attractive. He asked if she had waited too long, and she stammered, unable to reply. Seeing her confusion, he called again, but her mind raced with one thought. Could this be their first night together? If it happens, then the relationship will truly be real, right? I hope it does. "Are we going to do it?" she asked nervously, leaving him shocked. The room fell silent. He couldn't immediately find words, wondering what she meant, but resolved he would do whatever she wished. Her lady intervened, clarifying, and Alici realized she had overreacted. He wasn't thinking in that way, yet her imagination had run wild. "Shall we go to sleep? We're both tired, after all," she suggested, avoiding eye contact. He smiled, agreeing. Muttering to himself, he realized he had overthought things. Alici glanced at the teacup and recalled Madame Marseille's words about relaxation. She immediately understood why the woman had stepped out, to give them space. Sitting on the bed, she listened as he suggested leaving a light on. She asked if he usually slept with the lights off, and he explained he worried she might wake in the middle of the night and bump into something. Alici smiled, touched by his thoughtfulness. He smiled back, saying he was simply doing what anyone would do. As she laid down, she reflected on his words. Back then, it had never felt like this. She closed her eyes, thinking, this is what it feels like to be cared for. She knew it would be a pleasant night, but when she dozed off, she found herself in another realm. Suddenly, she heard a baby cry. Following the sound, she felt blood splash her face and woke up to see Esperad fighting assassins. He turned to her, worry etched on his face, asking if she was hurt. She could barely respond, nausea rising at the scent of blood. It reminded her of the time she'd been stabbed. Esperad rushed to her side, ensuring she was safe. She asked who the attackers were, and he explained they appeared to be assassins. Alici concluded they must have been targeting her. He cautioned that it wasn't confirmed. She reasoned it was likely. They hadn't feared coming, knowing the couple would be together. She noted that the threat already made itself felt in their marriage. While discussing the situation, her eyes fell on the teacup, which had changed. Esperad said the assassins must have been shocked. Despite rumors of being cursed, he'd still married in secret. Alici stated confidently that the deaths were not his fault. He sighed, admitting it was because he had failed to protect them. He grabbed her hair gently, inhaling its scent, telling her how relieved he was to shield her from death. He suggested they move from the room immediately. Alici told him she knew it would be a hassle, but thought it better to change rooms daily, since assassins often memorize their target's room before striking. I doubt that's the case. There must surely be an informant in this estate. Esperad agreed it was a smart idea. Before she could protest, he lifted her into his arms, even as she insisted she was fine. Carrying her carefully, he said he wouldn't allow her to step on the filthy blood any longer. She held on to him, thanking him softly, and he noticed how much she trembled. A thought crossed his mind. It would be nice if she could lean on him at times like this. The next morning, Alici sat by the window, gazing out quietly. Esperad's care and attention overwhelmed her, and each gesture reminded her of her past life, dragging her heart down. Just then, Madame Marseille announced her entrance. Alici invited her. Madame Marseille entered, her expression full of concern. "Are you all right? Feeling unwell?" she asked. Alici smiled, reassuring her. "The estimate's swordsmanship is exceptional. I didn't suffer a scratch." Relieved, Madame Marseille sighed, but Alici had summoned her for questions. "When did you first hear about the Graces' marriage?" she asked. Marseille replied it had been a week ago. Alici continued, asking when the bedroom location was finalized. Marseille said 4 days ago. Alici concluded that the servants must have learned about it then, and that someone had likely gathered information in advance before the attack. "Are you saying you suspect the household staff?" Marcel asked, alarmed. Alici's gaze was sharp. "There's no way an attack could happen without insider information of the layout. Even if someone claims the information was leaked, it doesn't change the facts." Madame Marcel's voice rose. "The entire staff of this estate aren't outsiders. They come from generations of previous servants." Is this maid trying to argue with her lady that there can't be a bad fruit from a lineage? That's impossible. Alici's voice cut through calmly but firmly. "Are you literally saying assassins were able to scout the entire estate in that short time? Even the station guards noticed nothing and none were harmed." Marcel had no answer. Alici instructed her immediately to bring the full list of servants, including all details and family backgrounds. Slamming the table, she demanded the information delivered today. Marcel called out, trying to protest, but Alici glared. "Instead of raising your voice at the lady of the house you serve, get moving. You'll be busy with those findings." Shocked, Marcel bowed and left without hesitation. Alici exhaled, relieved, thinking to herself, If she's trembling over something like this, it's obvious she won't even manage revenge on Joseph with this mindset. She stood, checked the cardboard, and confirmed the cup of tea from last night was safely kept. Meanwhile, Esperad left the estate, pondering the assassin's movements from the night before. Their precision suggested the mansion had been surveyed thoroughly in advance. With tensions between the progressive and conservative factions, he realized there was more than enough motive to send an assassin. He concluded that someone who wasn't a Kamedichi, but knew the family well, must be behind it, and the only person who came to mind was Count Mirk. It makes sense. His father had taken away the woman Mirk loved. That enmity might be on his mind. At Count Mirk's estate, Joseph Bonaparte, eldest son of the conservative Bonaparte family, had paid a visit. As he prepared to leave, Count Mirk instructed him to send his regards to his father. Joseph left promptly. Mirk sighed, thinking to himself, Joseph only has a handsome face, nothing more. The Count of Bonaparte completely failed in raising an heir. At least the second son, Godfrey, shows more promise. Just then, a message arrived. The Duke of Kamedichi had arrived. I feel there's a possibility of Joseph and Esperad running into each other. "Brother!" Esperad shouted as he entered, and once he sat, both exchanged pleasantries. Mirk mentioned he had heard about Esperad's marriage a few days ago, and admitted it came as quite a surprise, considering it hadn't even been a month since the Garavon incident. His Grace smiled and said he had met a wonderful woman and didn't see the need to wait. "I have something to ask you," Esperad said, and the Count nodded for him to continue. He asked how it had been 26 days since His Majesty lost consciousness, yet no one had spoken of it. Count Mirk froze immediately at the question. The current king of Astelhort, despite his youth, was so frail and constantly ill, there was usually no need for secrecy. Count Mirk had long handled state affairs on his behalf, and everyone knew it. But if Mirk had kept the king's coma a secret, that changes everything. Esperad could tell that Mirk was hiding it to continue controlling the state and holding power as he is now. Talking about this now would definitely make Mirk angrier. Could it be that Count Mirk is hiding this because he knows that if the state discovered His Majesty's condition, they would appoint Esperad as the new king? Could it also be that he's preventing His Grace from marrying, all for that purpose? A lot of things are becoming fishy, and the head maid looks like a suspect. Count Mirk froze when Esperad told him that whatever his intentions were, there would be a problem if it continued. "How could you say such a thing? His Majesty will surely wake up," the Count said. Esperad replied with a serious look, saying he was only telling him so they could find a solution. In situations like this, they should always assume the worst and not think of personal interests. Count Mirk shouted, asking if he was now doubting his devotion by giving such advice. Esperad calmly told him it was just his opinion. He stood up at once and said he would go, as long as the Count agreed with him. "See you again," he said before leaving, and the Count clenched his fists in anger. On returning to the mansion, Madame Marseille came to see the Duke. She bowed immediately and said she had something very important to tell him, and that it was about the Duchess. Esperad remembered at once that today was the day Alici was meant to begin her training, but after what happened last night, Madame Marseille interrupted him and said she had refused the training. Esperad sighed sadly and said it must have been shocking for her. Madame Marseille told him that was not the real issue. Instead, Alici had said she would not carry out her duty until the spy inside the palace was found. "I know she will struggle to deal with the servants, but," she was saying, when the Duke stopped her at once and told her to be quiet. He said that she seemed to see his wife from only one angle, forgetting that Alici would not only lead the family, but would also be his second face as Duke. He glared at the maid with a serious expression and said that what mattered most was that Alici was his wife, and nothing was more important than that. I literally love the fact that the Duke is placing this maid in her place right on time. Madame Marseille's expression turned cold when she heard the Duke telling her to make sure his wife was given everything that suited her needs. Madame Marseille bowed, saying she was wrong, before leaving. Later that night, Esperad visited Alici in her room with a bunch of flowers. She was surprised and asked what happened. He told her about what happened earlier and said he only wanted to make her happy. Alici was taken aback. She thought to herself that the smell was beautiful, but she truly did not know how to respond because she had never received anything like this before. Esperad then showed her the ring and explained that he had pre-ordered it before their wedding and it had just arrived. He gave it to her, and when she opened the box, she saw a silver ring and could not help complimenting how beautiful it was. Esperad apologized, saying even though it was late, he still wanted to give it to her. Her lady told him she never expected she would get a ring. He was shocked and wondered what kind of wedding did not have a ring. Even though they got married quickly, why would she not expect one? If he knows what she's been through, he'll understand that this ring means a lot, though. Her lady smiled and said she just wasn't ready for that, and that she had never received a gift before. "Thank you, Esperad," she said, and he told her he had misunderstood, but she said it was fine. The room fell silent, and Esperad felt sad because he had only made things more complicated when he truly wanted to make her feel better. He then decided to tell her that there were 2 plays being performed nearby, and asked if she would like to go watch them. The first one is Purple Empress and the Beast. "What do you think?" he asked. She replied that she was fine with anything. He then said the second play had cheerful and funny content, and asked which one she would prefer. Her lady told him sadly that she did not have any special taste. She didn't even know what she would like or prefer because no one had ever asked her such a question before. Esperad told her not to be discouraged, and she was surprised. He said she was only embarrassed because it was her first time receiving things like this, but she would have to get used to it as long as they lived together. This man is literally going to heal her from whatever she went through. He told her he would get both tickets so they could watch both shows. Her lady could not help but think to herself, was this going to be their first date? Neither of them had ever even been on a date before. At the Duchy of Grandeur, the Duke was surprised when he received a letter. He was told they did not know who wrote it, they were only instructed to deliver it to him. The Duke was even more shocked when he read the content. The next morning, he went to the Kamedichi Duchy, where he turned to Alici and asked if there was something she needed. She replied that she wanted to ask him something. Before she could even speak, the Duke asked if it was about the attack. Her lady was surprised and asked how he knew and how he already guessed what she wanted to talk about. He told her there was a rumor that Duke Kamedichi had strengthened his forces and that it did not really mean something serious was about to happen. "Rumors do spread fast," Alici said, while holding the tray. She added that the teacup had been in her bedroom the night the attack happened. Her father glanced at it and said it looked discolored and maybe it was poisoned. She told him she wanted it to be investigated, and if he wanted, she would give him the prize he wanted. He smiled and asked if she was really trying to make a deal with him. These 2 relationships are nothing like father and daughter, which is really funny. He told her it was fine and not that difficult, and that he did not need her help now, but whenever he did, he would call her. Her lady told him he could call her anytime and that the Kamedichi family would never forget the favor they received today. Surrounded by letters, her lady mumbled that she had planned not to take part in the social world until she found the spy, but she guessed she could not avoid replying to invitations. Just then, her eyes widened in shock when she saw one letter. She could tell immediately that it was an invitation to the palace. She thought to herself that if this was truly from the imperial palace, then she had to confirm something with Esperad. Since he would be coming soon, she placed it on the table, hoping to discuss it with him. Looking out the window, she thought to herself that it had been days since Duke Grandeur last visited, and there was no news about him lately. She wondered if she would get exposed. Just then, she heard Esperad calling out to her from behind, and when she turned, he smiled and said she was here after all. She handed him the letter at once and told him to check it. He replied that he had heard the royal palace had sent an invitation. She asked if something was happening in the palace, and he said there would be a banquet in 2 weeks, and most noble families in Astel would attend. Esperad smiled and said if she did not want to go, it was fine. Her lady asked what his opinion was. He told her he was suspecting Count Merk's movements and that it would be a good idea to go and observe the situation. It would be better to keep an eye on the attendance, especially with His Majesty's condition, so there was no reason to refuse. He looked at her with a smile and said he also thought it was better for them to attend bigger events after their marriage. Alici told His Grace that she would follow his opinion, and he smiled and said he would write the reply to the palace. Her lady watched him quietly. Later that night, her lady sat on her bed in silence, lost in her thoughts about Esperad. She wondered if he was always this considerate to others. She shook her head and told herself maybe it was because this was important to him. Now she could clearly see how miserable her life had been, to the point where she could not even expect small kindness from others. She hugged herself tightly, thinking that she really did not want to go back to the days when she was not treated like a human being. Just then, Esperad came in and called out to her, saying he was done with his bath. He asked cheerfully if she had been waiting for him and why she had not lain down first. She did not reply and was lost in looking at his body. He called her again, and she realized she had been staring too long. She quickly looked away in embarrassment and said she was just about to lie down. He smiled at her, and they went to bed. Alici closed her eyes and tried to force herself to sleep, but she could not, because he was beside her. She opened her eyes and was shocked to see Esperad staring at her. Oh, wow, so he can't sleep either. He called her by her name softly and thanked her for waiting. Her lady told him when someone knew she was waiting for her, it made her feel different. Esperad smelled her hair and said he would try to make sure she did not get tired of waiting. He told her to have a nice dream, and that is how they both fell asleep. When Alici opened her eyes, she found herself in another realm, and everything around her looked strange. She was confused and surprised, but it felt familiar, as if she had seen such a dream before. The forest suddenly lit up, and her lady was surprised because everything there felt known to her. Just then, she froze when she saw a little girl hiding behind a tree and peeking at her. She wondered who the girl was, but suddenly, she opened her eyes and woke up from the dream, only to find Esperad fighting assassins again. Why does she always have a dream each time they get attacked? Seeing how her husband was struggling to fight the assassins all by himself, she thought to herself that she needed to help him. Esperad managed to kick the sword out of the remaining assassin's hand, but the assassin immediately pulled out a dagger. They both turned in shock as he ran toward her lady. Esperad shouted in fear, and Alici quickly grabbed a pillow and blocked the dagger with it. Esperad killed the assassin at once and ordered his guards to seize him and put him in prison that minute. He called out to Alici, who was still in shock, and before she knew it, he hugged her tightly and asked if she was okay. Her lady's eyes were wide open. He pulled back and told her she could rest now, while he went to check around the mansion. She held his hand tightly and asked him to be careful. Later that morning, her lady summoned the guards, and they told her that many guards had died because of the attack last night. Her lady told them that when she woke up, she only saw his grace fighting with the assassins, and if he had not been there, she would have been in danger. Thinking about it all was too much for her, and she sighed, telling herself that if he had not arrived in time, she would have died again. Not long after, Madame Mars walked in and bowed, asking her lady if she was all right. She also informed her about the message from His Highness, Duke Grandier. She read the letter, and it informed her that there was indeed poison in the cup, but it was not a poison that would endanger her life. He was not yet sure what kind of poison it was, but he would get back to her about it. Alici looked up at Madame Mars and told her she had an investigation she wanted her to do, which was to find out who made the tea on the wedding night. Alici was shocked when Madame Mars told her that the servant was dead. The servant's name was Benjamin, and he had served for 10 years in the Duchy of Kamedichi. Alici remembered when she first came here, and Esperad told her she would meet Benjamin and Madame Mars. On hearing this, Esperad could not help but say how hard it was to believe that Benjamin was really the one behind the poison, and when they found him, he was already dead. They found him when the guards confronted the assassins. Her lady could tell from their movements that it seemed their target was not her, but a faction. She thought to herself that she believed she was the target, but it was all manipulation. Just then, she remembered that while checking the servants' records, she found out that Benjamin's sister was working under Count Merk. She told Esperad about Count Merk's suspicious movements. She looked at her husband, thinking to herself that at this point it would be hard for Esperad to move freely. She also felt it would be difficult to expose that Count Merk was truly behind it, because Esperad was still a young family head, and finding out about Count Merk's betrayal would really hurt him. She remembered that Esperad would get his right to the throne a few years later. She couldn't remember the exact year, but she clearly remembered that he got it after he got married. So at this point, she was trying to figure out if the reason he got the throne was because of marriage. One thing was certain, she needed to be careful of one person, and she also needed to act now and reveal what had happened. "I'll move now, Esperad," Alici said as she stood up. He asked if she was planning to go alone. Her lady told him that the main suspect was already dead, so now was the perfect time to act as his wife by his side. He asked if she was sure, and she smiled and said it was her duty as the Duchess of this house. Esperad did not know what else to say and told her they would have dinner together later. Her lady smiled and said she would see him later. Watching her leave, he could not help but think that even though she was slender and small, she had a strong back that gave her confidence. He wondered where that sudden confidence came from. His cheeks turned red when he realized he could not take his eyes off her anymore. Walking through the hallway, her lady thought to herself that the only reason she went back to the past was to take revenge on Joseph and destroy his life. And to do that, she had to make the Kamedichi family stronger. So she really needed to find useful information. Later that day, her lady went into the living room and asked who was calling her. "Are you Sophia?" she asked. And the marriage dress shop apprentice designer replied that she was. Before Alici's death, Sophia, the owner of Sophia's shop, was a famous designer. She could make perfect gowns and was truly a genius. Even though her prices were unbelievable, her dresses always sold out. Anyone who wore her gowns would be looked at differently by other nobles. Alici smiled to herself, thinking that she was a hidden trump card. After they spoke, Sophia was surprised when her lady told her she wanted her to be her exclusive designer. Sophia apologized and said there must be a misunderstanding. Alici was confused, and Sophia explained that she was still just an apprentice and not famous, so the offer was too big, and she did not think anything she made would satisfy her. Alici saw herself in the girl. She felt they were the same in the past, where no one acknowledged them and only looked down on them. Alici offered to pay her 30 times her salary, and Sophia was completely shocked. Her lady added that whenever they renewed the contract, she would increase her salary. Alici knew she needed a perfect dress for the banquet at the Imperial Palace, and she did not have much time. She asked Sophia what she thought, and if the offer still was not enough to bring out her talent. Of course, an amount like this is enough to get anyone working. Sophia thought about her struggles in the workshop and finally made up her mind. She told the Duchess proudly that she could do it and that she should trust her. Alici smiled when she saw how motivated she was. Not long after, Sophia made a beautiful dress for her lady. When Alici put it on, she thought to herself that the dress was not messy at all. Looking at herself in the mirror, she knew that no one would talk badly about her because a dress could truly change how people saw you. At the banquet that night, after dancing with the Duke, she was so tired and was looking for somewhere to rest when she heard a voice call her name. She froze. It was Joseph. He smiled and said he did not see the Duke around her, or was it because she was low-born and he did not want to stand next to her? Even in this life, he's still the same jerk that talks down on commoners. Alici froze when he smiled and said he should at least treat her like other duchesses, or maybe he disliked her so much that he could not even stand next to her in public. What did he just say? Alici thought to herself angrily. Someone really needs to teach this half-man how to speak. He deserves a pinch on the mouth for saying that to Our Lady. Joseph even told her that if she had married him, she would not have been able to save her life, and that was why she went ahead and married the cursed Duke, forgetting that her ultimate fate was still death. Hearing all this, Alici could tell that choosing the Duke over him had deeply hurt his pride. She held herself back so she wouldn't make the mistake of revealing her weakness to him. She walked closer to him and said it was really unfortunate. He asked if she was regretting it now, but her lady shocked him by saying he was a monster who trampled on women, and it was obvious he had an inferiority complex towards Duke Kamedichi because he would never reach the same level as his family. Joseph angrily asked what she just said, and before she knew it, he grabbed her wrist roughly and called her a country girl. Alici saw the same look in his eyes and felt triggered. When he asked how she could ignore him, she slapped him hard across the face, and his cheek turned red, leaving him in total shock. Yes, girl, he deserves to be hit some more. How dare he talk shamelessly after everything he's done? He called her crazy while holding his cheek and asked how a dumb chick like her could lay hands on him. Alici was so angry and mumbled to herself that he seemed more dangerous than usual, and that was to her advantage now. Everyone around started looking in their direction in shock, wondering what was going on. Joseph tried to play the pity card and spoke loudly so others could hear, saying he was only showing her sympathy since she sold her life, but she was being rude to him. "How can you treat me like this without understanding my intentions?" he shouted. Her lady angrily told him she did not mean to mistreat him in any way, but he should apologize for touching her body. She thought to herself that she should not be upset about how things were now. Joseph yelled and asked why he should apologize when it was her fault from the beginning. Alici felt he was standing too close to her, and he kept shouting, even calling her a fool for trying to act like a victim. Before she knew it, someone pushed Joseph away from her strongly, and he fell to the ground in a disgraceful way. Alici was confused and wondered who it was, only to turn around and see it was Esperad. This is so cute. He's literally his wife's knight in shining armor. "What are you doing?" Esperad asked, leaving everyone shocked, especially Joseph. He held his wife gently, and before she could speak, he told her to calm down and said they should go home and discuss this. Joseph got up from the ground and tried to explain to the Duke that there was a misunderstanding and that his wife was at fault first. Esperad coldly told him he insulted his family and even dared to harass his wife. "I'll gather evidence and present this matter to the nobles," Esperad said firmly. Alici was shocked when she thought about everyone knowing, especially the Committee of Nobles. Nobles punish those who disgrace their reputation and prestige, and the Committee of Nobles is an official body that handles disputes among nobility. If you offend a member of the royal family, you may even lose your title. Joseph was too shocked to speak. Monica stood at a corner watching everything and felt frustrated. Monica and Joseph were lovers, and she never imagined he would behave in such an unacceptable way. She had always stayed close to him because he was the next count of the Bonaparte family, and she also disliked Alici. Joseph hugged Monica and told her he wished to spend the rest of his life with her, and she replied that she felt the same, even though she knew it was a lie. He told her he wanted to send a marriage proposal to her family because he could not stay away from her. She hugged him and smiled, saying she loved him, but deep inside, she wanted to refuse the proposal. However, Joseph was the next count, and she wanted to take advantage of his position, even though he was foolish. Between love and status, she chose his status. Meanwhile, Joseph thought to himself that he might end up marrying a woman he did not like, depending on his family's wishes, just like before when he was supposed to marry Grandier's adopted daughter. Now, he had to get rid of this girl first, too. It's good that these two cunning people met each other. They should keep deceiving each other. The next day in the garden, Alici was lost in thought about what happened the night before. On the way home in the carriage, Esperad apologized sadly and said he should have punished that man differently, but he could not, and he was sorry for not being by her side sooner. Alici told him anxiously that he did not need to apologize like that. Even if we avoided that man today, she would still have to face him again later, but she felt satisfied because she handled it well. Esperad was confused and asked what happened in the end. She laughed lightly and said she was grateful that he got angry for her sake because she did not even know if she deserved such treatment. She froze when he told her she always said that. "You're my wife, so I can't forgive anyone who insults you. We're a family and a couple," he said. Her face turned red, and she thanked him again. This man is literally the kind of man any woman would want. Her lady told him that today was special for her, and before she knew it, Esperad moved closer and called her name softly. He touched her cheek and said she looked like she was about to cry. He held her hand and promised that he would not leave her alone again. They both stared at each other without speaking. The thought of him saying he would never leave her alone stayed in her mind. She kept blushing because she remembered how he said it last week. It made her heart beat faster and faster. Sophia noticed her lady was absent-minded and called her name in confusion. Alici realized and asked if she had already arrived, then said she wanted to give her something. She brought out a gift package and handed it to her designer, telling her to open it. Sophia was shocked when she saw what was inside. Alici was more generous than most noble ladies, because in society it was seen as a waste for women to own proper sewing tools. After receiving such a priceless gift, Sophia could not hold back her tears. She had been using old needles for a long time because merchants refused to sell new ones to her just because she was a woman. "Why did you give this to me?" she asked emotionally. Alici held her hand and said she noticed how rough her hands were, so she bought it for her. Sophia said shyly that she often got cuts and scratches on her hands, even though they were meant for creating beautiful dresses. Her lady told her not to be ashamed because she was brilliant. Sophia was truly an exceptional and creative young woman in her own right, and it was natural for her hands to be harmed since she worked constantly. Alici thought to herself that she did not resemble her former self at all, because back then, she leaned on Joseph, hoping he would one day see her worth, but he never did. Seeing Sophia now, she realized what an amazing woman she truly was, someone completely different from her own past self. Walking down the hallway, her lady reflected that whenever she thought about the past, she got confused. Holding onto the door handle, she wondered when she would finally free herself from this black hole of her own thoughts. Just then, she froze upon hearing voices from inside. She could tell that the king had passed out, and the voice speaking belonged to Mr. Edgar, Esperad's bodyguard. Esperad was saying it had been more than a month, and he could not believe that Count Merc had been hiding it. Her lady peeked through a tiny hole as they conversed about the conservatives being aware of the situation and sharing similar beliefs. Still, that offered no justification for their actions. She was about to enter when she heard them say that Count Merc was the most likely candidate to inherit the royal family. Surprised, she stepped in immediately, apologizing for interrupting their conversation. Edgar told her it was nothing since he was about to leave anyway. Looking at Edgar's smiling face, she thought to herself that in her previous life, she had never realized that the king would already be unconscious at this point. This was supposed to happen 4 years later. She understood instantly that the past had changed, but she felt confused. What exactly had changed? Was it the past, the present, or the future? Or had everything changed entirely? Esperad asked her if everything was all right, and she replied cheerfully that it was. She smiled, saying she had just been distracted for a moment, and apologized. But deep down, her lady felt uncomfortable, wondering if all of this was happening because of her return to the past. At this point, her returning to the past has already changed everything. The next morning, as her lady was about to wake up, she reached out to tap her husband, but his side was empty. She opened her eyes, sat up, and remembered that today was the gathering at the royal palace. She realized he must have awoken quietly so as not to disturb her. She smiled, rubbing his side happily, thinking to herself that she was already used to it. While eating breakfast, Sophia arrived with a beautifully packaged dress. She told her lady she looked so good in the previous one that she had sewn another. Sophia apologized for interrupting the meal and turned to leave, but her lady stopped her. Sophia was excited, but her lady asked if it was too much for her. "Not at all. The dress inspires me," Sophia replied, adding that she might have plans like attending a dancing party. Her lady murmured that she was free these days, so she intended to stay at the palace. As for her plans, she would be watching a play with His Majesty. Sophia was surprised to hear that. Ever since her lady told her she would be watching a play with His Highness, Sophia had been intensely interested in her ideas, and it was exhausting keeping up. Esperad smiled and said her effort was admirable. He mentioned that he had heard noble ladies were also interested in handkerchiefs. Her lady explained that it was because she was not used to this type of life. Before coming to the Duchy of Grandeur, she had lived a miserable life, sometimes not even having enough bread, feeling as though she might die from hunger. Her father had even sold his surname and his last name to escape poverty, yet their situation never improved. Even now, she wasn't fully convinced she deserved all this luxury. Seeing her lost in thought, Esperad told her that Sophia was an excellent fashion designer and that hiring her was a very smart decision. Her lady said that everyone had liked her dress from the party, and not only that, she had also made changes to the servants' appearance, which everyone appreciated. She admitted that she had never expected Sophia to do all this. Esperad replied warmly, saying it was all thanks to her. "I did not do anything," she said nervously. He told her that she had done a lot. Moving closer, he said she deserved everything she was receiving now, and she should get used to it, knowing that everyone was grateful to her as well. Her lady was touched and thanked him. The words, "everyone is grateful to you," lingered in her thoughts, because he was the first person who had ever actually said that to her. On Wednesday night, Esperad waited for her lady at the entrance of the carriage and was surprised when he saw her. "Am I late?" she asked, looking absolutely ravishing in her purple dress. "Sophia is really doing a great job in making Our Lady look so breathtaking. I really love the way this couple respects and loves each other." Esperad was so carried away by her beauty that he barely noticed anything else. She called out to him, and he blushed deeply, saying they should get going, though his eyes remained fixed on how stunning she looked. She caught him staring again and asked what was wrong, but he just smirked and said nothing. While in the carriage, they sat opposite each other, and of course, Esperad couldn't take his eyes off his beautiful wife. He asked if she felt cold, and she replied that it didn't feel that chilly. He removed his jacket and draped it over her shoulders, saying the night air wasn't good for health. She covered herself in it silently, feeling both warmth and comfort. An hour earlier, while Sophia was dressing her lady, she suggested adding a necklace and brought out her jewelry box. Sophia was amazed by how beautiful one particular piece was and asked if it was a present from the Duke. She suggested Alici wear it, but her lady replied that she didn't use it every day. When she had married Joseph, she had received a present too, but her mother-in-law had made a fuss, saying gifts were a waste of money. Meanwhile, Jessica, who was pregnant with Joffrey's child and married him, often received more presents. No matter how hard she tried, it was still difficult for Alici to forget those moments, which made her uneasy about wearing the Duke's gift. Sophia encouraged her, saying that if she used it more often, the Duke would see that she truly appreciated and loved it. Alici really got the right set of people in this life, and Sophia is one of them. Sitting in the carriage, her lady thought about whether she could hope for more after all she had gone through. Looking at the Duke, she realized he was different from the pathetic people in her past life, from someone who could actually make her feel safe and valued. At the play venue, they watched the funny performance, and everyone around them laughed nonstop, including Alici. Esperad watched her, smiling at the way she laughed, so genuinely happy. She looked adorable and completely carefree, and it warmed his heart. Noticing him staring, her lady asked if he didn't like the show. Flustered, he quickly said he was enjoying it too. She teased him, saying it looked like she was the only one enjoying it. He replied that it wasn't like that, but in truth, he was distracted by how beautiful she looked that evening. When the show ended, they headed out. Her lady commented that she had truly enjoyed it, and he was relieved. He had worried that she might not have. Impossible! That was really funny. I want to watch it again. Thank you, Esperad, she said, chuckling. Just as he was about to suggest coming back another time, a voice called from behind them. You seem happy. Esperad turned and was shocked to see Albert. It seems like you've forgotten about my sister's death, Albert said bitterly. It's so sad, actually. His sister died, and now he's with someone else. Alici remembered Albert's sister instantly. Esperad calmly told Albert they would talk later, but Albert shouted that this was far from over. He yelled at Esperad, accusing him of ending his sister's life and marrying another woman so easily. My sister died because of you, he shouted, adding that even now, his mother still faints whenever she thinks of her daughter, and his father had fallen ill too. I feel sad for him. His family's shattered, and the young man they blame is living happily? No one could bear such pain. Albert told Esperad that he regretted ever trusting him enough to let him get engaged to his sister. Alici immediately stepped in between them and asked him to stop. She said she knew she shouldn't interfere, but the truth was that the Duke never meant for any of this to happen. Esperad tried to stop her, but she continued, saying it wasn't even the Duke who proposed to his sister in the first place. Albert fell silent. Esperad called out to his wife, telling her to stop. She finally went quiet, frowning. Albert scoffed, his expression growing even bitter and intense. In the end, he had no choice but to leave first. Esperad apologized, and Alici could clearly see the pain and despair in Albert's eyes. On their way home in the carriage, Alici apologized again. She said she only stepped in because she believed Esperad was also a victim. She told him it wasn't his fault, but he replied sadly that her words wouldn't change anything. When he got engaged to Violetta, he knew her life would be in danger, yet he did nothing. Because of that, he believed it was his sin to carry forever. Her lady told him that if that was the case, then she would carry the sin with him since they were now a couple. Esperad smiled and apologized for showing her such a dark side of himself. Then he said softly that the necklace really suited her. She was surprised. He told her it was the necklace he had given her as a wedding gift after their marriage. I thought you didn't like it since you never wore it, he said, then added that she looked extremely pretty. She was shocked when he admitted he had always wanted to say that. She smiled shyly and told him that if he kept talking like that, she would get embarrassed. He sighed and said he felt the same, but he believed everything would be fine in the end. He also told him he was happy that she supported him, even though he still felt anxious inside. She called his name softly, and he smiled, thinking to himself that she was a strange woman with her own unique charm, one that made him fall deeper for her every day. At Count Bonaparte's mansion, Joseph was smashing ceramics in anger. How dare you act so foolishly, his father yelled. Do you know what you've done? You harassed the Duke's wife and disgraced the royal family. Joseph shouted back that he was innocent and suggested they ask friendly nobles to testify falsely so he could avoid punishment. Count Bonaparte slammed the table in rage, calling him a foolish boy. He asked Joseph if he really thought nobles who valued their honor more than their lives would agree to lie for him. Just then, Joffrey arrived and said he had a solution. Joseph looked at him in shock when his younger brother suggested that Joseph should be disowned. "Are you mad?" Joseph asked. Joffrey calmly explained that if Joseph were disowned, the family could avoid severe punishment, at least on the surface. Even their father admitted it was actually a good idea. Joseph yelled in disbelief, but Joffrey continued, saying that afterward Joseph could do volunteer work to rebuild his reputation and slowly regain his position. That way, the consequences for the family would be much lighter. Joseph snapped, asking if Joffrey was trying to take his place. Their father shouted at him to shut up and speak only when he had a better idea. Joseph was left speechless, while Joffrey smiled. Joseph cursed inwardly, convinced that Joffrey wanted his position all along. He clenched his fists, thinking that he would never allow himself to be pushed aside so easily. At Count Vellucci's mansion, Count Bonaparte's arrival was announced. Joseph could hear people whispering, saying they didn't expect him to show his face after the recent incident. They mocked him openly, calling him shameless. Joseph sighed bitterly. Everywhere he went, people treated him like a joke. His life had fallen apart so quickly, and he blamed it all on those people. Just then, a soft voice called out from behind him. It was Countess Vellucci. She smiled sweetly and said she had been eagerly waiting for him. "Do you have any business with me?" Joseph asked, suspicious of her sudden interest. She replied that she had heard about his incident with the Duchess of Kamedichi. Joseph sighed and said it was nothing but groundless gossip, secretly thinking she was here to mock him too. Before he could react, Countess Vellucci suddenly fell into his arms. He was startled. She told him her heart felt like it was being torn apart and asked what she should do because she had secretly admired him for a long time. "Are you saying you have feelings for me?" Joseph asked in disbelief. She nodded shyly and said yes. She told him she couldn't stand by and watch the man she loved suffer. She claimed she understood everything and believed it was obvious that the Duchess of Kamedichi had mistreated him because she herself had once been treated the same way and falsely accused of insulting the Duke. Joseph was surprised and asked if that audacious woman really dared to do that to her. Her lady told him she didn't just insult them, she also spread strange rumors about them, and they had never seen anything like this in their social world before. Joseph sighed bitterly that she must have intended to mock them from the very beginning. Her lady nodded and said she didn't believe this woman was acting without a reason. Joseph told her he knew her personality compared to that ignorant woman. Her lady smiled, thanking him for the flattery. She hugged him, saying they could help each other, and quietly let out a mischievous grin. The next morning, her lady woke up, rubbing her eyes. Esperad walked in, dressed sharply as always, and greeted her. She asked where he was going, and he replied that he had a meeting and needed to step out for a moment. "A meeting?" she asked, confused. "Do you usually have meetings on Monday?" He explained that there was some unfinished business, so he had scheduled another meeting. He warned her that the estate would soon be chaotic with the summer festival preparations and asked if she would accompany him. She said she needed to coordinate her schedule because she had a few social gatherings to attend. Esperad mentioned he might be late because of an unexpected engagement in the evening, but she told him she would be at the Countess Bourbon's tea party. He thought about it and concluded that it was just a family affair involving political donations, so it should be an ordinary social gathering without trouble. "Please be careful while you are out, Alici," he said. She smiled and told him he should be careful too. Seeing her smile, he couldn't help but think to himself, how cute she is. At Bourbon Palace, her lady arrived in her carriage, dressed elegantly in her finest clothes. Her lady heard someone call her Duchess warmly. It was Countess Bourbon. Seeing the Countess smile so cheerfully, her lady thought to herself, this woman must be close to the former Bonaparte. The Countess always enjoyed comparing her to her sister Jessica and looked down on her. Alici forced a smile, thinking that if she had known it was this woman, she might not have come. Alici thanked her for the invitation, and the Countess said she should be the one thanking her, adding that words could not express her happiness. Alici smiled to herself, thinking she might get some entertaining gossip from this. "I almost forgot to introduce my daughter," the Countess said, calling out to Isabella. Alici was shocked to see her. Isabella stepped forward and greeted her politely. The Countess explained her daughter usually could not attend social gatherings due to poor health, but she wanted to say hello. Alici thought to herself, this is really unbelievable. Why is she even here? Before this, she had never met the Duchess of Bourbon in person. She could tell the Duchess's health had deteriorated rapidly, forcing her to seek care. Alici had only met her once when she was bedridden with Joseph, but even then she had looked confident. Seeing her now, her lady wondered if her health decline was connected to carrying Joseph's child at the time. Her sudden return to social circles made it seem like she had moved past those matters. Isabella asked her lady if she was feeling all right. Alici apologized, saying she just hadn't been well these past few days. The Countess Bourbon offered to summon the family doctor, but her lady smiled, waving it off. "It's not that serious. I'm fine," murmuring to herself. "She's so kind. Reminds me of the old days." Alici was surprised when Countess Bourbon mentioned it was fortunate, as some had feared the Duke's curse had reached her. She watched them whisper among themselves, taken aback by their concern. Thinking it was better this way, she smiled and assured them she was okay. They called her understanding, and Countess Bourbon added, "Someone who has leisure should indeed have a broader mind." Alici replied calmly, "When a lady suddenly feels burdened, her mind loses its ease and she may become clumsy in her judgment." Countess Bourbon was shocked. What is that supposed to mean? It's crazy how bad people get upset when their energy is simply reflected back at them. Alici chuckled lightly. "I'm just saying I understand what I'm talking about. After all, I'm a wife and I get sick from time to time." Her lady walked away confidently, thinking they didn't need to fool with her. She had enjoyed the hospitality and decided it was time to take her leave. Blending into the other nobles, she suddenly heard a voice behind her. "I've heard your name so many times, but I'm seeing your face for the first time. Nice to meet you, Duchess Kamedichi." The voice sounded familiar. Turning, she recognized the woman who had publicly insulted her before, saying nothing her caliber of woman could do was good enough and that she was disgusting. It was Madame Bonaparte, Joseph's mother and her former mother-in-law. At this point, I seriously agree. She shouldn't have come here. Her hands trembled slightly, but she smiled politely. "Sorry for the delay in visiting. It's nice to meet you." Madame Bonaparte leaned in, her tone sharp. "Headaches come from stress. Are you feeling uncomfortable here?" Alici explained she hadn't slept well the night before. Madame pressed further. "Are your worries so much that you cannot sleep? Perhaps it's the threat of a curse troubling you." She added that she could speak freely whenever she wanted. She was there to listen. Now it's annoying. Why is everyone even bringing up these curse issues? Alici thought to herself, she seems excited, and it's weird because she's a woman who was always curious about others' misfortune. Just then, her eyes widened in shock upon realizing that she actually doesn't know anything about her, so she's bound to be curious. Looking at the others, she felt they're not much different. They're all the same. Alici knew that right now, all these people aren't what she should be dealing with. Rather, it's her own old memories she should fight. Alici finally spoke up, saying she's aware of the rumors surrounding her marriage, but there's no reason for her to be concerned about them. Madame asked if she's unbothered, even though it's a potential threat against her life. "Maybe it's because we're newlyweds and my husband showers me with so much love every night," her lady said, concluding that maybe because she is absorbed in her husband's overwhelming love, the rumors tend not to bother her. Her lady shocked everyone who was listening when she said that she and her husband were going to do it again last night, but she refused because she knew she had to come to this party. If they had done that, she wouldn't have been able to come. Madame Bonaparte felt really awkward and told her she was concerned, but it seems she has no need to worry. Deep down, she was cursing her for daring to speak without even knowing the subject. Alici told Madame Bonaparte that she might not be able to relate because a marriage that has been a while will never be like a new marriage that is still experiencing its honeymoon. Countess Bonaparte asked what she meant, annoyed, and she told her she couldn't associate it with her honeymoon fatigue. "You're quite bold," Countess Bonaparte said, and her lady sighed, saying she'll stop bringing up topics about her husband. Countess Bonaparte's mood had already changed as she told her she was taking her leave. "I did it!" Alici thought to herself immediately after she left. In her previous life, she couldn't do any of these. Just then, everyone's attention was called by Countess Bourbon, who thanked everyone for coming and stated the purpose of the gathering today because their family is trying to support businesses. The boredom began as they started showcasing talent that needed sponsorship. Her lady sat quietly, sipping tea, as the first participant came and proposed his business idea. The business showcases went on for a while, and her lady was already exhausted and wondered if they should really be watching this. Then a participant came with a gun he created, saying it's a gun that rapidly fires very small irons. He demonstrated it, and everyone was silent. The man felt awkward for not getting any reaction and left when they began calling him a scam artist. Her lady, who was sitting in a corner, thought to herself that this person is someone she needs to catch. In her previous life, that man amassed an enormous fortune with the future weapon, which was able to mobilize and keep one safe from any threat. Before she could chase him, he had already gone out the door, and she followed him. Her lady got into her carriage and commanded her raider to follow his carriage, but he informed her lady that the carriage she instructed him to follow was coming from a neighborhood meant for civilians, and she's not supposed to go to such a place without a knight. Her lady thought about it and realized it was indeed reckless. She wondered what to do and was lost. They got to a place, and she asked the raider to inform the Duke of the direction she went in, just in case of anything. Her lady covered herself up and went into the neighborhood with the intention of catching up with that man before it was too late. Just then, she paused in shock on noticing a woman in a corner. She wondered if that old woman was poor and lived there, but their eyes met, and the woman told her, "You're not from this world, or are you?" Alici was shocked, wondering how this woman could tell at first glance that she's not from this era.
This is where this part of the story ends. If you love this story and you want us to continue, please comment the protagonist's name, Alici.